Well, Mr. Speaker, today is the final day for residential school survivors to apply for compensation for abuse that they suffered. And we know that many survivors, for many reasons, have not been able to apply. We also know that in the last 3 months, we saw a huge increase in the number of claims. So how will the government ensure that the survivors who couldn't make the deadline still have the chance to access compensation for the abuse they suffered? Will the minister extend the deadline to cope with this last-minute rush?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indian Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government remains committed to achieving a fair and lasting resolution to the legacy of Indian residential schools. The Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement is court-supervised and was agreed to by multiple parties, including legal counsel for most students and the Assembly of First Nations. The most important thing our government has and will continue to do is respect the terms and honor its obligations under the Indian Residential School Settlement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member 49 O'Callaghan.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've seen flexibility in these deadlines before. We call on the government to have that flexibility once again. This compensation is an important part of reconciliation. Survivors need more than just words from this government. Instead, last week, First Nations organizations across this country were stunned to hear about the across-the-board cuts to their core funding. This will affect their capacity to deliver programs that, among other things, support the healing process for residential school survivors. Where is the commitment to building a new relationship with First Nations? Will the Conservatives reverse these reckless cuts?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We want to ensure that funding for Aboriginal organizations is focused on the delivery of essential services and programs in key areas such as education, economic development, and community infrastructure. That makes sense. After all, we've developed these shared priorities with Aboriginal leadership. Mr. Speaker, our government will continue to take concrete steps that create conditions for healthier and more self-sufficient, self-sustaining Aboriginal communities. Thank you.